Welcome back into Daybreak. 42 minutes past the hour. The state has now rested in the first-degree murder trial of Nicholas Godejohn as we now prepare for the defense to take their case here in the Greene County Courthouse. Adam Woody joining us to break down some of this stuff. A lot of evidence was produced yesterday on behalf of the state. We saw the alleged murder weapon. We saw the clothing that Nicholas Godejohn allegedly wore that night. What stuck out to you in terms of evidence, though, that really kind of put a red flag in the air?
Yeah, so the state went to a painstaking amount of time to present all this evidence. I mean, obviously, to lay foundations and things like that, it takes a lot of time to get this stuff into evidence. The entire afternoon was spent on these text messages between Gypsy and Nicholas, but the real thing that is going to be pointed out time and time again is the murder weapon. It looks like, from how the evidence came out, the murder weapon was actually mailed from here after the homicide to the location in Wisconsin, which is where Nicholas is from. To me, that's a little bit telling. Again, it goes back to the first-degree murder, which they have to prove deliberation or premeditation. When you're mailing things after a homicide, that sort of shows some level of pre-planning, and I think that's something that the jury's definitely going to hear about in closing arguments.
I think that's an interesting point. Most of the time when we talk about murder cases and the murder weapon, it's typically on how a murder was done or who did the murder. In this case, that's really not disputed. It's the fact that they took that and mailed it, and that can show cause.
Exactly. I think if the murder weapon was just sort of laying in the floor next to the bed, that's one thing. But again, the fact that they went to this added level of effort, this sort of added level of plan to mail the weapon back to Wisconsin, most likely in an attempt to hide it so that nobody would find the weapon. Again, that shows some level of planning, and that's what the state is going to rely on in trying to determine and try to convince the jury that this was a premeditated, planned homicide.
Also, about 2 hours yesterday in the courtroom, they went through text messages from Gypsy and Nicholas Godejohn at that point. Also aired an interesting interview that he had done on television, basically saying in the text message, I'm 100% behind the plan, and then even saying in the TV interview that, yeah, I had time to think about this. That's not going to be easy for the defense to repeal.
No, definitely not. I mean, the defense, I'm sure when they saw these TV interviews, just sort of cringed that Nicholas is out there talking so much and making so many statements, because everything that he says and anything that any defendant says, the state is going to be able to use to their advantage. Now, as far as the plan, both sides can sort of put a spin on that. Perhaps the plan was simply to marry Gypsy and to move to Wisconsin and start a family and things like that. That'll be the defense perspective, but of course the state's perspective is the plan was this homicide. Judge David Jones asked in the afternoon session if Godejohn had adequate time to reflect with counsel on whether or not he's going to take the stand. He kind of dodged the question and says, well, I may need more time. Didn't completely rule it out, though. Good choice, bad choice. There's a lot of risk when putting your defendant on the stand. Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of risk, and that's a very crucial decision in any trial like this. The decision whether to put him on the stand is going to be made probably sometime today. Judge Jones is going to make a record regardless whether he chooses to testify or not, because it's a very important constitutional right that he's giving up if he does not take the stand, or vice versa, a constitutional right that he's using if he does testify.
Very interesting. Adam Woody will be joining us all week as we break down the Nicholas Godejohn trial. Also looking to see if Gypsy will take the stand on the defense's behalf.